Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Quote Unquote with KK. Today, we are going to talk about Veda, Ved, and Yoga. Is it Xeno to XYZ Zen? You see, there are three industries which are multi-million dollar: the Ayurveda, the cannabis, and the yoga. And there is a trend of fusion and innovation which is leading to corruption or dilution of the original principles on which this cannabis industry has mushroomed. Recently, we celebrated the World Yoga Day, and one of the foreign countries where there were people doing yoga and demonstrating yoga were attacked by some people, believing that this is part of Hinduism and Hinduism was being propagated as part of yoga, which was not very true. And there is some sort of a xenophobia around yoga in some place. While a few days back, we celebrated the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. While I was doing my own research on cannabis and weed, I used to get certain SMS from our Narcotics Control Bureau. I do not know how they have been tracking me, but yes, warning me against use of narcotics and other substances. Let me just roll back and for our audience define what is Veda, what is weed, and what is yoga, and how do these are intermingling based on our ancient sciences and why this is becoming so hip and so cool. So Veda means to know. The oldest book of the four, the Rig Veda, talks about attaining spiritual states of union through cannabis, which is called soma. Translated from Sanskrit, a passage reads, "We have drunk some soma and become immortal. We have attained the light. The gods have been discovered." The last holy book, the Atharva Veda, refers cannabis as one of the five most sacred herbs humanity has to release anxiety. It's a sacred glass and a heavenly guide. Weed, that is cannabis, should not be seen as form of complementary or alternative medicine. In Ayurveda, cannabis is a nutritional supplement that most people in India and around the world have already used to cope with stress or modern living. More and more people are turning to it for this reason, as well as its anti-carcinogenic, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, and antidepressive, neuroprotectant, and pain-killing properties. Ayurveda, on the other hand, which is the Indian medical system that co-evolved with the spiritual system of yoga, has recognized cannabis as a medicine since ancient times, using it to treat dozens of diseases and medical problems. Yet, many new fusion and instant gratification forms and practice of yoga, Ved, and Veda have emerged outside of India. While many purists in India feel that this is not the ancient Indian science and have a xenophobic feeling that this is going to corrupt our ancient science and Indian Gen Z and the future generations in India towards adoption of weed and cannabis. While Western cultures are rapidly adopting our ancient Indian sciences, which were very much foreign and xeno to them, but there is a huge amount of innovation and a lot to do with glamorization and hipness. Where is this going to lead to? To talk about all this, we have a yogi who came from a glamour industry and is now professing both Ayurveda and yoga. Let me welcome and introduce you to Yogi Cameron. A brief introduction about Yogi Cameron. After spending 12 beautiful years in the fashion and beauty industry in the 90s, he worked with likes of Madonna and several rock stars. He went to India and disappeared for a decade and studied Ayurveda medicine, spiritual sciences under his guru Sri Vasudevan and Dr. Hari Palachari. He traded the outer fame, fortune, and beauty of the high life for an existence of solitude, wisdom, and inner discovery. After some years of wandering in places like Himalaya and practicing with other yogis in ashrams, he eventually settled down and found his guru Swami Sasyaganananda, who is his guru today. After years of practice and contemplation, he found what works best for him is to have a balance of both inner and outer beauty, so life never becomes extreme or uninteresting in one direction or the other. Today, Yogi Cameron is one of the most celebrated Ayurvedic and yogi practitioners in the world. Since 2003, he has taken these ancient teachings from India, where he was trained, to around the world and has been on various TV shows and media outlets. He has written books and presented on various forums, and his book is called The Yogi in You. The other book that he has written is The One Plan, and his recent book was The Yogic Code, which holds 7 of the most important and powerful teachings of the yogic path. So we are going to talk a whole host of issues around yoga, around drugs, around addiction, around fashion, and what's fashionable. Is it true? So let me welcome Yogi Cameron. So welcome to Quote Unquote with KK, Yogi Cameron. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you
Let
so
me
much
begin
for
by
having me.
first understanding and for the audience benefit, your life journey.
I actually was born in Iran, and then during the revolution I left. I went to boarding school in England because my mother is English. And I went to sports college, started to play tennis and rugby and football and all this thing. And then one day somebody stopped me in the street in London and asked me if I wanted to be a model. So I took a chance, and 2 weeks later I was living in Paris. I was on the catwalks and doing shoots for like all the Versace and Valentino and all the different houses. And so I went on that journey for about 12 years. And during that time, I had a mentor who was mentoring me in natural medicine, in spirituality. I started to do yoga. So I had this sort of unusual position of doing yoga, being in the fashion business, staying up late, going out a lot, and reading about yoga and meditation and whole foods and organic foods and farming and all this kind of stuff. And after about 12 years, and during that time, I worked with Madonna and Elton John. And like I said, I did Guess Jeans. I did so many different campaigns, and I sort of became one of the supermodels at the time. And so I got to see really what the big glamour life is about, and fly around, speak languages, earn good money, and live in different cities, Paris, London, New York, LA. And during a meeting with Nelson Mandela in South Africa in his house, I am sort of looking at this man who had been in jail for 25 years or 27 years and who was innocent, basically. So peaceful, so loving, kind. And there was something in his eyes and the way he spoke. And I said, I need to start to understand more about the inner journey. I kind of see the fashion business and the beauty business as the outer beauty world and that journey. And then the inner journey became the journey of learning yoga. So I went back to New York, stopped modeling, and started to take a yoga teacher training. And at that time, I was learning a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine, what that is. And I started to understand, you study Ayurveda with yoga, because they are the sister sciences. Ayurveda being about your lifestyle, your body, keeping it healthy, and yoga being about the mind and beyond the mind and meditation and all that. So I did my 6-month training, and then I couldn't find anybody to teach me Ayurveda. So I called a school in South India, and I asked them if I could come down, and they had room. So I left, and that started my journey and my love affair with India. And as soon as I arrived in India, I felt like, I've arrived home. This is my home. And started to train and learn Ayurveda for the next probably 10 years. And it was during that time where I started to learn about how the mind and body really affect each other, and the journey of, all the different layers of consciousness and how we all operate in all these different consciousnesses. So there's no good or bad, really. It's just everybody operates out of a different level of consciousness. So that was my journey, basically, from supermodel and the fashion business, beauty business, into the spiritual and health world.
It's quite an eventful and spiritual journey that you have had over 10 years, and also living across different cultures. You had the Western culture and you have the Eastern culture, and also learning the discipline that Indian culture of yoga and Ayurveda instills in a person. How do you find this whole transition in yourself? And you have been an icon as well, taking this message to the Western world. How do you feel your journey in this whole transition across cultures have been?
It's a fulfilling journey, because in your youth, when you're very young, you like moving around a lot, you like excitement, you like to understand more about the world and travel. And that happened during the time I was model. So it was perfect timing, because up to from 19 to about 31, that's what I did. And then around 31, when I started to take that inner journey, I was a little bit more mature to be able to understand more about myself, the journey I was taking. I was sort of more present in the journey rather than being a spectator of the journey. Right? And, Ayurvedic medicine, yogic science, they're so deep. There's so much to them. They expand so far that it just fascinated me And then once you start to study and you understand how your own mind works, you start to get deeper into one aspect of it that really you love to do. So although I'm a yoga practitioner and I do many of the tantric practices and things, Ayurveda is my calling. Right, because everything in my Vedic chart, for example, through Jyotish, everything is about healing myself, healing others, speaking about healing, understanding. And really, the world at this point needs healing. We all need healing, right? So it's very much my calling to be in that whole genre. So that's really where I am at this point.
And I wish you and the universal energy all the strength and energy for you to take this message across to the whole world and spread this message. My sincere greetings to you and your guru who has instilled these values in you. Our thing is about health and happiness. And obviously, both Ayurveda and yoga are very, very strongly instilled in our ancient Vedic sciences. And people somewhere have lost it. Let me talk about the mind part of it and what mind alterations and what you could do with yoga and other chemicals and substances a bit later. But let me just pick up the aspects of Ayurveda and yoga, because this is where both the Vedic sciences and the yogic sciences actually intersect to give an individual and his body happiness and health.
Yeah.
How did you see yourself transforming from a model who was traveling hectically and having a lifestyle? How did this alter your body, mind, spirit, and how did you derive happiness and health through your experience? It'll be great for our audience to know about that.
Well, it's a journey, right? We're all taking journeys called our life. And of course, karma is involved. Your dharma is involved. When I was in the fashion business, my dharma was to make things beautiful, to take them out and bring them to people in the most beautiful way. And really, my dharma started to change and take that inner journey to understand what is it beyond that. At one point, I sort of rejected fashion business after a while because I thought it was irrelevant. I thought, many people asked me, they were like, oh, you must be happier to be out of the fashion business because it's so superficial. And I used to think about that and say, I didn't find it superficial. The nature of fashion is to make things beautiful and then present them to people. That's the nature of the business. Like it's the nature of a cricketer to hit as many runs as he can and field and, get the win. So everything in one aspect can be looked at frivolous, everything, politics everything can be looked at. So I found it. And then it got me thinking, well, what place did fashion play in my life? And once I started to mature and understand my inner journey with yoga and Ayurveda, I saw that, actually, from the moment people wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is they check on how they feel, right? So this is really Ayurveda, right? It gives you that capacity to feel well. And then the second thing people usually do at some point, they look at how they look. And then they start to fix their hair, put something on their face, maybe shave, and, make themselves pretty or nice or handsome or whatever. So that intersection of fashion and beauty with Ayurveda and yoga, I had missed for a long time because I thought fashion was irrelevant to my life. But actually, more people connected with me around the world because of my fashion days, because they didn't really understand the yogic practices. They were like, yeah, that's really good. You get up at 4 o'clock, you do all kinds of different rituals, you do puja, and your wife and you are yoginis and yogis, and I don't have 3 hours to dedicate to the divine every morning. So they didn't really connect with that. They really connected with, I saw you in an ad, and I saw you nice looking, and you make these things look pretty. And so I realized the relevance of it is actually, if I want to connect to people first on the surface level and then on a deeper level, I first have to meet everybody where they're at, not where I'm at. Because I was trying to say to people, let's practice, let's do these things. They can give you so much health. My enthusiasm was too much, but actually you have to meet everybody where they're at. And most people are not there. They're busy, they're living their life, and things are hectic and then they don't have time for practice or they don't make time.
Exactly. Yogi, you have been very fortunate to understand, given your life being an Arabic Persian world and your mother from UK, and you lived and worked in the Western world as well. And then you transitioned to the Eastern world, the Indian culture. And you see, very recently around the World Yoga Day also, we had this issue of non-acceptance. There were some riots also of some people who were actually demonstrating yoga in one of the countries. And it seems that there is a xenophobic feeling. It's something foreign or alien as these Indian sciences are concerned and not very much globally recognized. How did you face these sort of challenges, or people actually taunting you or talking or rubbishing about what you learned and you started preaching yoga and Ayurveda in the Western and other foreign cultures, cultures, I would say, other than Indian? What sort of difficulties did you face to clear the air about yoga and Ayurveda across these cultures where you understood them better than an Indian who would profess Indian cultures and Indian ancient sciences to them?
Well, I would find what it is that the pain point is. What are they suffering from? Because anybody who's suffering from something wants relief. If you can offer relief to somebody, they're going to listen, right? When you're in pain, when you're suffering, when you need some kind of relief, you're going to listen to anybody who can give you that, right? So remember, America has been quite open to yoga. A certain population, not everybody, but
Correct.
Certain population has been open to yoga. But what I found was actually problem here became too many styles of yoga started to appear. So we have Bikram yoga and Anusara, and we have actually hundreds of different types of styles of yoga. So the essence of the yoga got lost in asana. So asana became yoga to what people understood. So the general public generally started to think this is exercise. So they started to do it as a form of exercise and not as a spiritual teaching, right?
Correct.
So I think that became the problem especially in America. And I'm talking about the big cities. In the smaller cities, especially in very religious places, they didn't understand yoga. They thought it's a Hindu philosophy,
Correct.
right? So before Hinduism, yoga was already there, right? So it's been there thousands of years. They thought it was a religion. So they thought people were going to start, converting from Christianity into Hinduism, right? So that became the primary thing in the smaller places. But otherwise, in the bigger cities, really, more and more yoga came, but then it got into much more a physical practice than a spiritual. So I think that's the main thing that really changed. And it's still becoming more and more physical. But there's a section of, the population who always go deeper. And we look for those people who want to go deeper and learn the rituals and want to learn the beyond breathing, and they want to learn chant mantras and things. The yogic science and the chanting and it's so vast. It's such an ocean that's so vast. I think people, unless they have a good teacher, somebody who can understand and then gives them the correct things to do for their own benefit, it just becomes this whole thing that they get lost in. Do I follow Tantra? Do I follow this? Do I follow that? Hatha Pradipika? What do I do? Read the Gita? It just becomes so massive. And you need somebody to lead you to say, well, now do this. Once you've done that for some years, now do this. And of course, the Western mind is very much in a hurry. So we tend to skip steps and then we think we need to do other yogas. So suddenly we do this mishmash of all kinds of things and then we get lost. Right? Because when you start to play, this is one thing Guru will teach is if you start to play with spirituality and you don't take it seriously, it has a bad effect. It doesn't have a good effect, because you're playing with something that's not. Of course, if you're chanting Om Namah Shivaya, great, that's no problem. But if you're wanting to go deeper and deeper, then you have to have a reverence for the practice, a very great respect for it. And then the practice itself will lead you forward into the next thing. And then at the right time, the next thing thing will come. So you don't actually have to look for anything. It will find you.
Did you face resistance when you changed your name to Yogi Cameron? Did people ask you? Did people say something to you? And what convinced you to change your name to Yogi?
I just added Yogi to Cameron just to depict that I'm on the Yogi path. That's all. It didn't become a statement as such. It just said, before I was Cameron, that's how I lived and in the culture in my previous life in fashion. And now I'm the same person, except I follow the Yogi path.
So a new avatar as a yogi.
That's it.
Was what you announced to the world.
Yeah, basically. And there's 12 steps of yogis. There's many. So I'm not saying where I am on this ladder, or it just maybe encourages some other people to look into it as well. But it's not a great statement, really.
Yogi, you've written several books. You've spoken. In fact, you were in India also, and you've spoken on several media platforms. What has been your key inspiration to write these books? And can you briefly outline the theme of your books for our audience, and then we'll also share the links of your books as well in our podcast header?
Sure. All the books I've written so far are on Ayurveda and yoga. The first one was called The Guru in You. The premise is that the teacher is already in you. So if you do the yogic practices, if you follow the Ayurvedic lifestyle, you will take that inner journey and you will come to your guru, right? So not everybody finds an outward guru, but even if you find an outward guru, they always tell you the same thing. The guru is inside of you. I'm inside of you. So you don't need to just be with the physical guru. So that was the first book. The second book was The One Plan. And this was about the different practices of Raj Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And I was putting it into basic premise of this is how you can practice it in your daily life, right? You don't have to change your life. You just have to put these into your life, right? And the third book was the Yogi Code. And the Yogi Code teaches the 7 principles of yoga, from setting your intentions to having your purpose and finding love and all that. So that was purely yoga and contemplation and meditation, and it gives you some practices. I write books for people who are beginning or somewhere in the middle. I'm not writing advanced books. I'm writing really for people to encourage them to start taking the step. Because most people want to feel good. But we have to simplify. Life has become very complicated. So I'm teaching people how to be able to go backwards a little bit, simplify how their life maybe was before. Because most people are saying, I don't have enough time to do these things. So I'm showing you actually have plenty of time. It's how you manage your time, right? So teaching that kind of things as well, how to manage your time. And then it's not about doing 3 hours of practice. You can just do half an hour, but dedicate that time, because it will benefit you so much, and it would take away so much anxiety and pain and all those things that you're in, because it will start to help you to manage things better rather than take on more things.
Yogi, one of the critical things that you have written and spoken also is how these practices of yoga and Ayurveda actually also impact your relationships and critical, very intimate relationships in life as well. What have been your lessons there? How have you been able to create a very healthy and a loving relationship in your personal life? You've talked about it as well, and shared it also with your partners as well, how they have seen it is a very important message. I guess our current generation, and as well as our generation also, seems to have missed out how to live in a healthy relationship with other people.
Well, I made a very precise decision. I sankalpa this relation, which is to be married with a yogini, which is, I was alone after some time, and I met my wife, and she was on the yogic path. And so you can sankalpa something to be like you do, traditionally in India. We were married in a small temple in India. We had our charts read. We were compatible. We did all the traditional Vedic, things that we need to do. So I suggest you do that, because that's an important part of your own culture, and it gives you direction. Starts to show you that maybe you're with somebody, how you can better and strengthen your relationship. Because ultimately, two people who come together, if you're very, very, very different, it's very tough to have a relation. There has to be enough similarities, groundwork, belief system to be able to start, growing something. If one wants to grow apples and the other one wants to grow oranges, they're very different. So we have to find room for both trees, right? So there's compromise. You have to listen. You have to not be so reactive. There's a whole bunch of things. And you have to see what the other person also needs so you can complement. Because on our side, we're good at some things, but we're not good at other things. The other person is great at something. They're not good at other things. So we have to understand those, talk about those things, be open about those things, and then hopefully complement each other in different things so we can grow. And then understanding that you'll have miscommunications, you'll have disagreements. And then if somebody gets louder, then the other person should get quieter. It's the opposite. Counterbalance, right? We need that counterbalance to happen. Just so sometimes we're listening more, sometimes we're talking more. It's kind of like you go outside, it's hot, you take your sweater off. You intuitively know these things. So you start to have a little bit more of an intuitive relationship. You allow things to blossom. You allow things for change. You allow, today's day of living is very complicated, right? Super complicated because we're more and more taught to be individual, right? So imagine everybody today is being taught, be individual, dress differently, be individual. But the ironic thing is people want to fit in. So how do you stay individual and fit in?
Right.
This is a little bit of juxtaposed position to be in. You have to be a very balanced person to be able to do that. So you're not too overpowering in a relationship and you're not too weak. You're just like this, right?
Right.
So yoga and the practices really help you with that. They start to allow you to be more intuitive and listen and then see. And of course, you're not going to get it right all the time. So don't expect that either. You have to have a lot of patience with yourself and with the other person. And then you start to find the rhythm. You have to find there has to be that rhythm that you work within, that you do understand each other. That has to be there. And like I said, things are complicated. So you have to give a little bit or a lot of patience to that as well.
Yogi, may I ask you, is your next book going to be on yogic-based principles for a fulfilling lifelong relationship?
I don't know yet. I have to think about that. Well, definitely my wife and I will write something together at some point.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of your YouTube videos and a couple of your presentations as well. Very inspiring though.
Yeah. I mean, it's all yogic philosophy. So if we do something, we'll definitely write about that. But Ayurveda is there too. You have to have a healthy body. If you don't have a healthy body, it's hard to have a good relationship because you're always in pain and you're not feeling well. And, so your health is of utmost importance when you're talking about a relationship.
So here again, your health and happiness get intertwined even into a healthy relationship as well.
Yeah. To make good decisions, you have to have health as well.
Again, you took up a foreign culture and you married in an Indian way of maritals or a wedding ceremony. How did the world react to this as well?
I think they found it very beautiful, actually, because it's so colorful, it's so accepting. And, my wife and I just love India. It's like a home to us. We have a big family there now, and we go to the village where we were married. We go to the temple, and then we go to another area and see our guru. So everything we learn, everything we know has come from that culture. Right. So we're very happy to bring it out and spread the message. But when people see our marriage photos and they just like, wow, this is so beautiful.
Unlike the big Indian fat weddings.
Well, ours was very, it was like only 3 hours. And it was in a tiny village. Actually, only about 6, 11, maybe 12, 15 friends and family members came. And then the whole village came. So we had like 250 people. And the villagers were saying that this was the smallest Indian wedding they've ever been to. Yeah. So no, it's beautiful. It's a really, I mean, Indian weddings around the world are very famous for being
Right.
colorful, music, family, big, so it's beautiful.
How do you convey this message about the Indian culture, the inclusiveness of Indian culture? You mentioned that,
Mm.
the world and the cultures across the world want you to be individual, whereas our culture wants you to be not individual, but inclusive in nature
Hmm.
and accept everyone
Yeah.
inside you. Do you feel that people are conflicted when we talk about our culture and how we profess to gain health and happiness through our
Mm.
Vedic sciences and our historic knowledge? Is there some sort of a conflict in the minds of people when you talk about how happy you are in your relationship by practicing
Mm.
a certain way or a certain method of
Mhm.
adopting your lifestyle? Do
Mm.
people across Western culture find it very foreign and they find it very alien to how you profess the way you live
Mhm.
now?
Yeah, to some degree, because again, when you're talking about Vedic science, tantric science practices, and a lot of it's foreign. A lot of it we don't teach because we're not supposed to teach it. So we're really teaching a lot of basic things. But most people agree that unity and inclusiveness is what they want. If you've grown up with a lot of prejudice, racism, or whatever it is, then maybe it's a foreign idea to you, right? So I think this is probably across the world. What we're seeing today is a lot of segregation. Things are becoming compartmentalized because people are attacking countries. And
Right.
now we have abortion rights going on in America, going back to the old ways. So people want to evolve, but they don't always know how to, and they don't always have the tools to. You need tools to evolve. You need tools for everything. You need tools for building a house, to make a car, right? So to evolve, you also need a tool. The nice thing that's happened over the last 10, 15 years is there's a lot more people teaching about consciousness. So this is expanding into the smaller areas of life, because traditionally America is, Chicago, Miami, New York, Los Angeles, the big cities that are more cultural and international, were always more progressive. Now you're getting a lot of the middle America also, primarily because so many Indians are moving to the middle America, so many Chinese are moving, so many Asians are moving. So these cultures are also coming and intermarrying in the middle of Illinois, in the middle of wherever. So what we're finding, a lot of the cultures are now mixing, and then they're starting to get to know more about, oh, you eat this way. Oh, this is about Ayurveda. Oh, this is Chinese medicine, So we're getting a lot more of that, which is nice. And a lot more teachers are teaching about consciousness, which is great, because that means more people are interested in meditation, more people are interested in. Now we're at the beginning of it because, people are being taught many different methods, and some are doing 20 minutes a day, some are doing longer, some are doing 5 minutes. So we're doing this sort of what people call baby steps of learning. And that's also to do with people's time. Most people are just working too much, so they're tired. So I think there's an openness to it, because it would be very strange if people were not open to the concept of unity. And integration isn't always accepted in some religious groups, for example. They don't want that. And we've had that example over the last 2 or 3 years when white supremacy came along and all that stuff. So we're seeing some people, but it's not the greater people. The rest of the world wants to unite. Europe wants to unite. The Indian culture is only now just spreading in a bigger way into the Western culture, right? As Indians, 10, 15, 20 years ago, not that many Indians were traveling, going to other countries. Now Indians are traveling anyway, right? So now naturally we're getting Indians marrying other cultures, right? So that in 20 years is going to be great, because we're going to have that interrelationship. We're not going to be so segregated. Segregation is part of fear. That's all. So the unity is, and we have Gen Z and Gen Y. They really want to be unified, right? Because they are seeing that the way that their fathers, grandfathers, and things in the Western culture did this, it didn't bring the fruits that they really want, right? Because everybody at the core wants acceptance.
Correct.
Right? And wants to be accepted. So that's Gen Z wants to be accepted. Gen Y wants to be accepted. So they're growing up in a whole different way. They're growing up with social media. They're growing up with communication between them in all over the world. So they know what's going on everywhere. And their saying is, we want clean air. We want more ecology. We don't want to work all the time. So they have different values, which, it's like an experiment. We're going to see how this works out in the next 10 years, 20 years. We don't know the effects of it just yet because they're going to be voters. And some of them, Gen Y, are voters.
Correct. Yogi, before I conclude this section of our conversation on WXYZ and you spoke about the Gen Z and Gen Y as well.
Yeah.
And we have talked about the Veda and yoga. I want your message to the world, how to be happy and inclusive and unite themselves. As a yogi, what would be your message to the world to unite and be happy? There's a lot going on in the last few years, and people are very unhappy. People are very crazy about what's going to happen, very concerned about future. How do they let go? And what's your key message to them as a yogi and a practitioner of...
Do a little bit more listening and less talking. That's one of the first steps. Empathy, yeah, because our opinions change very quickly. Don't be somebody who wants to give your opinion quickly, and be somebody who wants to evolve. If I want to evolve, my opinion that I had yesterday is not of any importance today. All the things we talked about yesterday, they have no consequence to it. So be somebody who lives in the present. That's wonderful. But be a good listener and know that people want the same things as you. Maybe they say it differently. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they're disappointed. Maybe whatever it is. Ultimately, if in this moment there was an earthquake, for example, you would have to help each other.
Correct.
So just pretend there's an earthquake all the time and help each other. Don't think about what you're getting back from it, and don't think about this and that. Just act in that way so you're more unified and you find the things that you have in common. And then if you have disagreements, listen and see what is the disagreement. Because many of the things people are arguing about, fighting about, it's not their idea. It's actually their parents' idea and their grandfather's idea. Do you want to be like your grandfather? Do you want to be like your parent? Or do you want to be better than them? So if you want to evolve and you want to make the world a better place, don't be like your father. Don't be like your grandparents. Don't be like have great respect for them, but spend your time not disagreeing with them either or trying to change them. They are of the past. If you want to make the future better, then if you're going to have children, do it different. Keep doing it differently. So in this way, I don't have a problem with you all the time. I'm not disagreeing about everything. And then we can find common ground because ultimately all of us need clean air, clean food, shelter, these kind of things. That's common to everybody. But what we find in the world is we're arguing about so many different things that are not actually important. And we're fighting about them and we're killing over them and we're getting anxiety over them. But start to understand what is happening. What is the truth? Ultimate truth, not your own truth. So these are the things that can really help. First, give yourself peace and then share that peace with other people. Because if you're not a peaceful person, you're not going to be able to share peace with people.
Excellent. So, that's a great message.
Yeah, these are the messages of the yogis, the gurus, all the peacemakers. It's really everything starts with us. It doesn't start with somebody. Change is not about changing other people. Change is also the world itself. The ecosystem has its own karma. We don't know what that is. So we can't change that. If you're upset about the environment, do something about it through your own life. Don't expect everybody else to change. If you're unhappy about something in the world, change it in your own life. Become the example. Because if you're the example to other people, then your people will be inspired to do it. But if you just talk about it and tell people, it's like a politician who just keeps giving empty promises and then nothing's happened.
Got it. Hey, I want to move to the W part. You lived the high life as a model. I'm sure you must have also tried some of those stimulants in those days because it's all there there in the glamour and the music and the creative industry, right?
And it's free. Or it
Correct.
was free.
Yeah. And over the last few decades, there is a move to legalize some of those,
Yeah.
especially cannabinoid and weed, whatever the
Yeah,
younger
in
generation calls it.
California here, now it's legal. Yeah.
Correct. And what we are finding, especially in India also, yogis and people consumed it.
Yeah,
It's part
sure.
of our Ayurveda. It has got a lot of medicinal properties for different conditions. Obviously, now the medical sciences is now doing its own research to reaffirm what our own old Vedas talked about it. And I'm seeing a trend, especially in the metrosexual people and the younger generation, to actually use this to feel more happy. And especially during the COVID time, a lot of people were working from home and living out of their home in lockdown conditions. This whole trend has actually increased. And now people here find it to be cool to consume weed and consume some of these intoxicants. And I'm sure this could be a habit forming as well. What has been your experience of having used these sort of intoxicants and chemicals and weed? And how did you want to convey this message as a yogi, whether it's good or bad? I don't want to create a judgment in the minds of people or judge you either as well. It's part of
it's part of culture. When I first tried it, I probably was 19, 20. It was for leisure, feel good. It sort of gave you this feeling of being relaxed. If you had any anxiety or and you smoked a little bit of weed and then you went out, for example, you had a good time when you're with your friends and things like that. So my experience of it was that if you smoked it to a small degree, it wasn't harmful. It was sort of balanced and you weren't overtaking it. A few times I smoked it too much and it just kind of knocks you out because it goes in your blood system and it's a narcotic. So it's not like a painkiller of that kind of thing, but it just puts you to sleep. So I didn't have any bad experiences with it. What I did see is for people who smoked it a lot or daily or weekly and smoke too much of it, eventually it's habit forming. And what happens is your body starts to get used to it. So you need more of it, like anything. If you eat too much sugar and then you keep eating it, you need more to feel better or feel that rush. And I started to look at why do people smoke? Some people smoke it because they're anxious. They want to bring down anxiety. Some people, it's a form of acceptance. They don't feel they're socially awkward, so then they smoke a little bit and they feel more accepted. They can talk freer. But like anything, the amount that you do. So, for example, if you eat sugar, it's the amount that you take of that sugar that your body can digest without it becoming a habit, right? It's not getting used to you using it. Because once you hit that threshold of using something too much, the body kicks in to start to have side effect, right? So weed in itself, obviously it's in Atharva Veda, it's there. It's the Shiva, smoke, all of these things. So it's historically there as a herb that's medicinal, but it wasn't smoked as such. It's a preparation. It's quite a complicated preparation. It's not an easy thing to just make. Smoking it is different. Smoking, inhaling, it's burning. So it's partly becoming a carcinogen to a point because anything you burn a little bit. So it's not great on your lungs. It's strain on them. So if you eat it, it's probably the most natural way to do it. But obviously you're doing that medicinally and you're mixing it with other herbs that work. So the ideal way you're going to use it is that it's not making you high as such. So you're not getting a high feeling from it. You might be getting a relieving feeling from it. For example, cancer patients have been experimenting with this for a while. They don't want to take medicines or pharmaceuticals, so they're turning to weed. They're turning to different strands of weed, different strengths of weed, and they're using it actually as a painkiller. So there's various medicinal properties for the skin, but you're not going to smoke it. If you smoke it, it's not going to have those medicinal properties for your skin, for those kind of things, for irritable bowel and things. That's only if you have it in a concoction, a formula, and it's made with the right herbs in the right amount. That becomes medicine. And when you're smoking it recreationally, that's not medicine, right? So there's a distinguishing factor of smoking something for for getting high and taking it for that reason. That's a recreational thing. That's a personal choice. Is it good or bad? I don't know. To the point in somebody's body. I never smoked it that much to become addicted to it or anything. At some point when I went on the yogi path, I didn't smoke it anymore. So I didn't have any addictions or anything to it or any bad experiences. But I know that if you keep smoking it and the body gets used to it, it will give you side effects. It will damage your brain at some point. It will damage your lungs at some point. So if you're a casual smoker who takes a couple of puffs a week, once or twice, it may not affect you like that because the quantity is too low. Remember, in everything we do, even if it's medicinal, quantity is key. It's like making that perfect meal. Just a little bit more salt or pepper or masala or whatever is going to ruin the dish, whereas the perfect amount helps the digestion, gives you that good feeling, food digests very quickly, it's perfect. So when we're talking about marijuana or when we're talking about any herb you could take ashwagandha, you could take shatavari, tulsi, whatever. If you take too much of it, it will give you some kind of side effect to some degree. Obviously, when you're talking about ashwagandha and things like that, they're not mind altering. So they may mess up your stomach or give you diarrhea or something. But when we're talking about weed, we're talking about something that you can get hooked on. So we're talking about something that alters the mind to that point where you're not in this consciousness, you're in another consciousness, right?
Right.
And that's what people like. They like to be in different consciousnesses. But let's differentiate and make clear is when you're smoking it recreationally, we're not evolving. When we're talking about Atharva Veda and Shiva and taking it, that's a whole different thing. That's something beyond our scope of understanding. And then when we're talking about it medicinally, we're not smoking it as such. I know some cancer patients smoke it, but we have to make it into a concoction. That's really the way we do it.
In fact, during COVID time, ashwagandha was propagated by a lot of Ayurvedic formulation companies to help boost your immunity against COVID. And in fact, I started consuming ashwagandha as well, 1 pill a day. And it's helped me. My metabolic age has not increased over the last 2 years. I just did a measurement just earlier this week. And it told me the same metabolic age with some more benefits on my fat and other parameters as well. So Ayurveda obviously says everything in moderation, and I'm sure this is the truth that one needs to probably understand as well. What's your view? This was never illegal in ancient history of India.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it got banned. And now we are going full circle and wanting to again make it legal. Do you think we should make it legal or we should just keep it as a controlled substance?
Well, the way the world is going, remember where we are today, especially in the Western culture, this way of living has really, over the last 100 years of the Industrial Revolution, we've become 4 billion people more. We've accelerated through so much of life. We've made planes, trains, automobiles, everything. And then in the computer age and electronic age, we've just gone so quickly. Life is moving quickly. So ultimately, it will become where this will become a commodity or become a business like everything has become. And then we're going to see the results of it because if people have access more and more to, especially if they're very young, drug, we're going to see their minds different in the future, right? Because we're seeing how the mind is different now with young people who've been using phones or who've been playing video games for the last 20 years. We're already seeing those minds altering. So drugs are going to be another substance that gets people hooked to some degree, as video games have, as your phone has, right? Because these things are not built, they're built for business. They're not built for being sattvic. The people who make something generally don't sit around and say, is this good for the world, right? We live in an economic system. We don't live in a health system. We don't live in a humanitarian system. So everything we're creating, especially, this is Kali Yuga, right? So Kali Yuga is one of the 4 yugas, and it's the densest, most vicious of all ages because it's heavy. It brings out worse in a lot of people. So trying to create something and make it sattvic is not the common goal of most people, right? Because the system itself doesn't support that. so much. So we are having a trend where people are now growing organic. They're trying to watch the carbon footprint, even growing organic weed, things like that. Yes, we're trying to do those things, but within an economic system, anything, whether it's weed or whatever is going to come, it's going to eventually become a business, and whether we like it or not. But I think education is a big part of what we do for people. Is saying, when I smoked when I was young, I always was healthy. I always go to the gym or running. I think I wasn't getting stoned all the time. It had a place. Maybe I'll go out with my friends at night, and that was my balance. I think everybody needs to find where is the balance for them, because Ayurveda says each person's capacity is different. So I can't say to you, do this much or that much. As an Ayurvedic practitioner, I can give you a quantity of herbs or something to take, because that's different. I can understand the capacity of how much ashwagandha you should take. And your body will tell me eventually and regulate, right? But when we're talking about drugs and things like weed, the body's capacity will keep becoming more and more, because it keeps getting pushed more and more. So
Correct.
I would suggest, if young people are listening and you have decided that you're going to smoke, find where the balance is for you, because ultimately it's not pretty when you get hooked, right? And if you cannot smoke it, great, don't smoke. But people want their freedom these days.
Correct.
They value it, they want it. So if they think it's cool and they try it, great. But I would say don't smoke it because you think it's cool. But balance in everything. How much you eat, you should find balance. How much you talk should be balanced. How far at night you stay up should be balanced. Everything needs that. And when we say moderation means where is the balance for you? That's really what moderation.
A lot of people have actually detoxified themselves using the principles of yoga and Ayurveda as well.
Yep.
And how do you profess these sciences even into the younger generation who believe that this is too foreign for them? They don't have the time, or they don't want to get that spiritual understanding of who they are, rather than see what is hep and how to go high. How do you see them practicing and detoxifying themselves also, even if they take it in moderation or recreational limits?
So, for instance, when you get up in the morning, have a glass of hot water first, right? Because if the night before you ate too much or you smoked or whatever you did, it first gives the digestive system an opportunity to gain strength, right? Before you take chai, before you do anything else, before you drink juice or whatever it is. And then wait 30 minutes, and then take your shower, brush your teeth, do all those things, and then start to see what is my body more compatible with to eat. Because the Ayurvedic principle is eat things that you can digest, and don't eat things that you can't digest. So you have so many varieties of things to eat. If you can find the ones that you can digest, that would be optimal. Because if you can't eat these two things because you don't digest them well, there's 10 things that you can eat, right? So that's another principle of Ayurveda. And then at nighttime, take some triphala, for example. Triphala is like a wonder herb, 3 different fruits. You take it at the end of the night, you take it with a little bit of water, and that will help cleanse it during the night. So what you're doing is you're doing all those things you want to do. You might be a drinker as well. You might all these things. You've taken in air pollution during the day, and air pollution is getting worse and worse. What you're doing is helping yourself from the morning a little bit, nighttime a little bit, and then do some exercise. You're starting to take these Ayurvedic principles that you think are so foreign, but actually they're not so foreign, right? They're just common sense.
Got it. Great message about this as well, how to detoxify yourself if you have taken some intoxicants. I want to shift gears over here and discuss about the cross and between yoga and ganja or the cannabis. There are certain yogic practitioners also who have written books and glamorize weed and yoga. And it is so foreign to our core purist way of looking at Ayurveda and yoga. What's your message to the people who want to practice? And you said you also practice tantric yoga. So that's also one of the branches of yoga which tends to use weed and other intoxicants as well while practicing yoga. How do you differentiate and these sort of glamorized variants of yoga which were not actually written in our ancient texts of yoga and practicing of yoga?
Yeah, they're not. Well, to Tantra in the West has become more of a sexual yoga or
Correct.
whatever you want to call it. So this is a total misunderstanding of it, because there is some texts that talk about the lingam and yoni coming together, but they're speaking about it in higher practice. They're not talking about it in a sexual way. So many people have taken that and made it into that. As far as I know, there's no use of certain substances in Tantra. There may be I know for example, the Agoris use
Correct.
certain things and their own practices. The Babas have their own things that they do. The one that we follow is from the practice of Saundarya Lahari. Saundarya Lahari has nothing to do with using any substances. It's really mantra, yantra, and mandala. So we're using geometric forms with chanting given by Guru. And that's our tantric practice through the Saundarya Lahari. The other practices, what's happening is people think they need to add to the ancient practices. The ancient practices were perfect because the rishis brought them. They lived in forests. They didn't have any cell phones. They didn't have any computers. They weren't trying to sell anything. And they were sitting in the direct source. And that's why the teachings are perfect. That's why you need really a guru to teach you that.
Correct.
Right? Not a real guru, right? Not just somebody who decided to be a guru. Those practices should never be done without a guru. But because we live in Kali Yuga, because we live in the fast world, because we live in a financial world, because of all these different things, and because we live in, yoga says, the 5 kleshas of the ego is there as one of the kleshas, this has led to many things happening. We have Bikram yoga. Go into a hot room and you start doing yoga. People feel really good. Why? Because they have a lot of stress. They go into this hot room. Their body opens up very quickly. So they're getting instant gratification.
Correct.
And convenience and instant gratification is what the Western culture is built on. It's not about doing it the right way. It's about finding shortcuts. And because our standard has become lower and lower, we now think that this standard of lower, we've forgotten that the standard was actually here, way, way, way above. And because it came lower through the generations, those other generations forgot that there is a higher way to do it. But now they're so used to doing it this new way that they don't want to do it the other way. It's too much of a time consumption. And remember, not everybody wants to go deeper into these things. So they just want to get some benefit. So smoking and then doing yoga or doing mushrooms or whatever it is, they come and go. Those things come and go. All generations have had them. All the people came to India who did LSD, all these kind of things. It's all happening. It's never gone away. It's always been there, and it always will be there, because you have the person who's seeking truth and you have the person who's distracted and just wants some entertainment, right? So most people want entertainment, right? Because it's just too difficult to do it the proper way.
Yogi Cameron, the whole tantric yoga or whatever different manifestations and connotations that are emerging towards leading to sexual side of things. The original human being, whether you talk Shiva or the Narayana or whatever, there's always a male and a female part in your own energy system.
Yeah.
In
Shiva,
your own
Shakti.
individual side.
Yeah.
And it's all about how do you energize and strengthen both your male and female side of your energy.
Yes.
And it's not about the sexual side. That was what the original tantric energy system of enhancing your energy in your own body was. And this is now being misinterpreted and split into male and female energy.
Yes. Well,
And
again,
that is what has led to the whole sexual industry and porn industry and a lot of thrash that has been written in the Western and in our Indian side of things as well, talking about or linking it in a shortcut way to sex, right?
Well,
Do you think that we need to redefine this? Obviously, I'm not talking about the tantrics at all, because the Gauris and tantrics are a very different dark side of practice of yoga and their own science. I'm not talking about that, which gives instant gratification or whatever you want to, but there's a karma to it as well. How do you want to tell the people and some yogis who have written books and profess themselves in the Western world that this is the way, you can get instant sexual gratification? It's not going to last very long for them either, because you're not energized your both sides of your male and the female side. You just enhanced your male side if you're a man, or a female side if you're a woman.
Yeah. Remember, where I started the conversation when we started was everybody is has a different dharma, came into the world with certain karma, and everybody is at a different conscious level, right? So when you want to say something to somebody, you have to find where they're at. Where is their conscious level? The reason people in the world are fighting so much is because one is saying typically to somebody else, I don't understand why you think that way, right? What they're essentially saying is, I'm on one conscious level, you're on another conscious. So the people that you're talking about have taken something, or they haven't taken the whole thing.
Correct.
They've just taken a bit of it, and they've decided that that bit is the most important thing to them. And then they've made a business from it and they go. You don't have to say anything to them, because ultimately the people who find them are also looking for that. Because if those people were looking for the entirety of the practice, they would not attract that person. They would not attract that book. So there's a place in the karmic journey of that person. It came into being. So it's what we have to accept is one of the things we talk about with Guru is we don't know the mysteries of life, right? Not in Gita, it says not even the demigod knows the plan of the divine, right? So it means that there's a certain mystery to world, that things have to happen the way they do because it's all perfect in the way the divine wants it to be. So these books, these things, they come and go, come and go, come and go. They serve a certain purpose that we don't know about. I don't know about. I don't have privy to that information. Is it correct? No, it's not correct according to the Shastra. But is it valid? Not the way I want to practice. So I don't know any of those books. I don't follow any of those people. And I have a guru, right? And whatever guru says, we do. So I only go by what I've found in my life, is which I've attracted a proper guru. So I know that I'm on the right path. Because, sex, drugs, these are all very enticing things because they're very on the surface, available to everybody. And you get pleasure. Remember, the mind desires pleasure. It's one of the things it does. So the more pleasure people can get, that's what they're trying to. That's most people in the world are looking for comfort, they're looking for pleasure, and they're looking to be entertained, right? They want a good movie, they want to go to a nice dinner, they want to eat something delicious, they want to have some kind of feeling that they're feeling good, so they maybe have a drink, they have sex, they smoke something. This is all desire, right? Which is really what driving all of us. So until the collective consciousness changes the direction of that desire, people will keep writing these books. People will keep wanting to smoke. People want to keep drinking. But that's the individual desire. But that individual desire has so much to do with karma. It's not, because some of the people are doing some of the craziest things in the world, and some people are saints, and most of us are in between somewhere.
So I guess there will be another yuga after Kali Yuga where we will transcend back to the new normal. In the new normal, I hope.
Well, in the other yugas, there's still conflict. It's not, Sat Yuga is the highest yuga, but in between the other two, we will ascend at some point. We're not going to find bliss. The bliss is within you. Whether it's in this yuga or the next yuga, you have to find your bliss inside. It's not finding the bliss outside doesn't exist, and it doesn't last. The one inside lasts, but you got to work hard for it. The one outside, you don't have to work hard for it. You just buy something, smoke it, or you drink, or you have sex, or whatever. It's a little bit of bliss, and it lasts a very short time, right? That's why it's free to everybody.
I would love to leave this podcast with you on a very blissful note, and your blissful message is the bliss inside and not the outside.
Yes.
I really would love to thank you, Yogi, for taking time and talking to us very candidly on these very controversial topics. Many yogis in India wouldn't want to talk about it, and that's why we had to bring a foreign yogi to talk on a podcast and a topic like this. Really appreciate, and I want to welcome you back to India very soon.
Thank you.
And I would love to host you also in India. And if you are visiting India, I would love to also connect with some of my colleagues who are doing very fundamental research between Indian and Western practices of medicine, including Ayurveda, and probably bring them also on table and get them to also meet you and talk to you as well.
That would be wonderful. I actually last year started to use nanotechnology and liposomal technology to make a herbal company. It's an Ayurvedic herbal company. So we're making ashwagandha, we're making triphala, but we're using liposomal nanotechnology. So it's liquid, very fast absorbing because we've broken down the particle. So this is a good example of how we're using science. Is we can use science in a balanced way, but we still take the Vedic way and the Ayurvedic way to bring the same herbs, but we can use
with a different mechanism of action.
Yeah, instead of a pill, a pill takes 4 or 5 hours to digest. Here, within a minute you're absorbing. So these are the new ways we can incorporate things. So we're not against everything, but we don't change things from the core of what they are.
Excellent. Before I let you go, I'd like to thank my team and your team as well to get this coordinated, our sponsors and the people who have researched on the body of Ayurveda, and also my pranam to your guru as well, who has created such a beautiful disciple and a human being.
Thank you so
much for being on my podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.